and then involve your team to improve those and get them better. And then they'll have buy-in and skin in the game. And then you manage toward that process and you enforce like that process to make sure it's done. And if the process is wrong, that's fine. You're doing it consistently wrong. You can tweak it and make it better. And if somebody's not following the process for whatever reason, you can ask questions and then you can identify maybe they're not a good fit for that role or the process is broken, whatever. It just gives you a way to manage your business systematically instead of just playing whack-a-mole all over the place and trying to figure out what's wrong.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am really excited to gain insights today from John Burdett. John, you are the president and CEO of Fast Slow Motion, which I definitely want to understand the name. And we were talking a little bit before because you did major in computer engineering, I believe, and you started out as a software engineer, but you have primarily been in leadership roles in every organization. And one thing I definitely want to talk about is servant leadership. I saw that's a place we really connect on. So I'm very excited to get into this conversation with you today.
Awesome. Likewise. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you got from software engineering to CEO.
Yeah. So I got my undergrad degree in computer science and started off my career as a software developer. So I graduated college in 2000. So back in those days, you built all software from scratch. You didn't have a lot of software applications that you were using to run businesses. So I had the pleasure and honor of going to work for one of my professors who had started a software development firm. And we built custom applications for really kind of Fortune 2000 companies, much larger companies. So enterprise level invoicing systems, data warehouses, those kinds of things for large companies. And that was a tremendous experience to learn a lot at a very, very young age. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth and made a lot of mistakes and really where I learned the value of emotional intelligence. That wasn't even around then back in those days, but I definitely started off my career as being one of those people who was extremely ambitious, wanted to move up quickly, was really focused on the results and didn't really value or understand people at the time. So I was all about myself and trying to move up the ladder, if you will.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point that most of us go through, right? Whether it's in volunteer work, it's in the world of business, we want to prove ourselves. We want to prove that we are ready for the next role. And sometimes that means we take too many things on because we know we can do them. And the next person might not do them the same way or as fast or the way we want it done. But it also, I think what you're getting at, it can have some downfalls because if you don't bring everybody up with you, right, then it may not understand the product, the process, what you're trying to achieve. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that part of how you went from being, a collegiate, like an athlete and, going right into the workforce with a favorite professor, what lessons, let's dive into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, so it was a really cool opportunity because it was a small company. I would think I was employee 15. So I was given way more responsibility than I deserved. I was 21 years old talking with CIOs of very large corporations. And I can't imagine what it was like on their side of the conversation. But I didn't lack confidence and I kind of just volunteered for everything and took that on, which is something I often recommend to young people is just like, you don't know what you don't know. Go out there and try things. Don't be scared to fail. What I didn't value at the time was, in order to achieve excellence, I didn't have to do it in a way where it was all about the results. I could find ways to be excellent and also bring along other people, as you mentioned. So I learned the lesson of how to become a servant leader by really making all the mistakes and realizing that I'm working 12 hours a day. I'm getting a lot of results. I'm being successful. I'm getting promoted. I'm having all these things, but I'm miserable inside because I'm not valuing people. I'm not bringing along people. It's kind of lonely at the top. I'm going to have a celebratory dinner of one because nobody wants to have dinner with me kind of thing. And so I lack that self-awareness around that. I was pretty ignorant to it. I kind of thought everybody was wired the same way. thought everybody needed to be led and managed the same way I was, that kind of thing. And so a lot of that was ignorance and definitely a lack of self-awareness of who I really was, what I was good at. So I did that for about 6 to 7 years. I
Oh,
worked for this company and had a lot of good success. Moved up very quickly. Was really running a large portion of the company at the time. I had like 150 people reporting to me. So we experienced some tremendous growth, but I was very frustrated. I was kind of, I was always in firefighting mode. A customer was always upset, an employee was always upset, and I was constantly just like putting out fires. And I was like there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better business model. I never even dawned on me that it was me. I was the problem.
no.
And and so I pivoted, and one of my business partners now and friends had started a software based company in the ticketing industry. And he was like, do you want to join me? So I kind of left all of that opportunity behind and helped him start that ticketing company out of his basement. And by that time, I'd learned some lessons along the way, and the literature on emotional intelligence would come out, and I read those books, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're not the problem, I'm the problem. And I started developing that mindset of, okay, there's a better way to lead. Real leadership is servant leadership, and if you can't do it with people and lead people, it doesn't matter how successful you are. It can be an and instead of an or. And that was very enlightening to me to really kind of establish that self-awareness.
Yeah. And it's nice that you were able to come to that yourself, right? I think sometimes we come to ourselves, sometimes people are afraid to tell people, hey, you might be lacking these skills
Yeah.
because of the way that
Yeah.
somebody might react. But then that's unfortunate because that other person isn't getting to upskill and learn these
That's right.
lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody really had the courage probably to have that hard conversation with me. Is like, you don't have to be an asshole. You can love people and expect excellence at the same time. And so luckily, I developed that self-awareness, and it really changed the trajectory of my career and really how I lead and run businesses now. And so at Fast Slow Motion really kind of turned everything on its head to say, I'm going to do it the right way this time. It's about people. It's about being excellent. It's about doing things the right way, not lowering the bar, but really elevating people. And we're now 120 people, and they're doing things way better than I ever could. And I'm getting the benefit and the blessing of seeing them succeed. And honestly, that's way more fun and way more fulfilling than me succeeding myself.
Yeah. I think it's the difference between culture, which you've now created a different type of culture of what the expectations are, how you're going to show up, how you're going to lead, versus climate, where in a climate, you don't know what's going to happen. You might be all out, one person might be all out for themselves or getting the results, and
Yeah.
other people don't know what's going on. So kudos to you for realizing that, being able to switch and then be able to propel this to growth for your own businesses. And from your career trajectory, you've always been in startups, very entrepreneurial businesses. And then, of course, you went into your own journey of saying, okay, let's do a little more. Now I want
Yeah.
to be the president, the CEO. I'm going to hang my own shingle.
Yeah, I love operations. I love being the behind the scenes person, the number two person, kind of thing. I never found myself to be extremely visionary or strategic. I kind of fell into entrepreneurship with my professor offering me a job out of school. I knew I didn't really enjoy working for large companies, but never really knew if I would be an entrepreneur. But I fell in love with it. And what I realized, and I appreciate the compliments, but it took me 10 years to figure that out. So it wasn't like I was a fast learner. But what I really learned about myself is I love building businesses. That is what I enjoy. And I did, kind of was on a 6 year period with multiple businesses, and I would get bored and want to go do it again. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Because my friends would be like, you left that opportunity. As like on paper, I had it made, right? Everything you wanted. Yeah, maybe on paper I had it made, but I was bored. I wanted to go do it again and do something else. And that was the genesis of starting Fast Slow Motion. I wanted to help other people build their business the right way, using good systems and processes, not making all the mistakes that I'd made along the way. Because I knew I knew the entrepreneurial community. I knew what it was like to be a business owner and a business leader and the stresses that come with that, both at work and at home and in your relationships. And I'd really learned for myself that life is fully integrated. You can be a good dad, a good husband, a good CEO, all those things. It can be an and instead of an or, like I said before. And I wanted to share that message because I really think work's a great thing. Work is fun and I enjoy working but I'd also don't want to miss out on those other
Yeah.
important things of life. So that was really the kind of the secret sauce I kind of developed and was the genesis around starting Fast Slow Motion. And so we kind of set that up so that we would create a company that we loved as well while we taught other people how to do that and add real value to them.
Nice. You've hit on some really key points. And obviously, we all say since the pandemic, but I think it was probably already a shift that was happening, but it just was amplified by the pandemic that we all want to have time to invest in our loved ones, in those
Yeah.
relationships that will be there way after work is gone,
Yeah.
right? And so finding the right opportunities, like you, I've had great opportunities that I've walked away from because I'm like, yes, I can continue taking this great paycheck, but I don't feel like my value system is quite the same
Yeah.
or that I'm able to do the work that I was supposed to be doing, or I get bored, same kind of things and say, okay, I need to do something that will really fulfill me.
Yeah.
So this is fantastic that you were able to identify, oh, this is a huge need for people. And I will say, as a business owner, 100%, having that person who really understands operations and can systemize processes is so vitally important. And I wish when I had started my last real business, my PR firm during the pandemic, that I had all that stuff in place before,
Yeah.
because we were creating it as we are bringing in
That's right.
clients and running everything else. Let's talk about the name first, Fast
Okay.
Slow Motion. And then what are the biggest areas that you help other businesses in?
Sure. So there's two stories behind the name. The first one's pretty funny. So one day I walk into the kitchen. My son's probably 6 years old, and he just throws a ball at me out of the blue, just being a typical boy. I reacted and caught it, and he was like, "Dad, that was cool. That was like fast slow motion." And I was like, "That's a cool little phrase, buddy." And so I went back and bought the domain that night because I was, like you probably, domain names are hard to find, and when you have a good name, you're like, "I'm going to grab that one." So when I was looking to start this business, that one just constantly kind of came to the top of what I would kind of name the company. And I'd already owned the domain name. But the really kind of the thought behind the name and where it comes together is just like a professional athlete or somebody who is well trained and they put in their 10,000 hours to do something, things come naturally to them. They're proactive instead of reactive. That 95-mile-an-hour fastball looks like a grapefruit to them, but to the common folk, it looks like a BB, right? They can't even see it. And it's because they're not prepared. They didn't put in the work ahead of time. They didn't have the good disciplines and processes in place to be able to do those kinds of things. And that same thing really applies in business. So often we're not putting the core processes and systems in place. And the result of that is chaos. We're reacting to everything. We're chasing shiny objects. Customers are upset and it gets all of our attention. That key employee leaves and everything falls apart. And I want to teach people and I want to set up a foundation where you can drive your business looking through the windshield instead of the rearview mirror. I want you to be able to be proactive and you work on the business instead of in the business, right? You're able to enjoy life because your business runs itself because you've put those proper systems in place. So that allows you to move fast while things appear to move slow. And the opposite occurs for your competition, right? The things are flying by them and they're so reactionary. They're moving so slow, they can't keep up with things. So that was the genesis behind the name.
It's so interesting because I feel like that's where we are right now as well with AI and technology.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a conference yesterday and ICIC and I'm on the Intuit Small Business Council, so Intuit was part of it. But it was all about bringing small businesses together to talk about these issues. And people are saying, yeah, it takes a little bit time. It slowed down my business a little bit to implement AI workflows and strategies where they, could help streamline processes. But now I'm moving a lot faster. I'm
Yep.
making more revenue than my competition who perhaps tried something for 2 weeks, a month, and then gave up because it was too hard or they weren't seeing fast results. So what you're doing really is pivotal for other businesses as well.
Yeah, consistency compounds. And so often as us business leaders and business owners, we don't take the time because we're the hero, right? Heroes start businesses and get them off the ground. Because you got to figure out how to make money. You got to be very intuitive. You got to be just reactionary. You got to take advantage of opportunities. But once you figure out what your business model is and how you're making money and how you can make money consistently, you've got to think 10 steps ahead. You know, what's it going to be like when we're 10 times as big as we are today? And if you don't put those processes in place so that you can allow other people to be onboarded to start handling those with the same level of quality, and most importantly, consistency, because you can fix consistent, you can't fix all over the place. And that's why most businesses don't scale. If you look at, like, you know, the statistics of small businesses, there's very few businesses that grow past 20, 25 people. And the reason for that is because the business owner can't keep all of that in his or her head anymore. And they can't do everything like they were doing before, and it gets out of control. They start hating life. They get frustrated. They can't go on vacation. They're like, why, all my employees are stupid. They, why can't they handle it? And they're really the problem because they didn't instill the disciplines. And a lot of times, they don't make that mindset change, right? They're not self-aware enough to say, I've got to change the way I lead. I've got to change the way I run this business. Now, there's nothing wrong staying a 20-person company. All I'm saying is you need to be intentional about who you are. If you want to stay small, nothing wrong with it. That's great. Okay. And that'll determine the decisions you make around processes and systems and all that kind of stuff. But don't pretend to want to become 100, 200, 500, 1,000 person company and still act the same way and pretend that it's just going to be easy as it was getting to 20 people. And so we help people kind of make that gap. If you want to scale up, we come alongside you very empathetically to help you, because we've made all the mistakes you have, to challenge you, to make sure, you adopt, you put in the systems, as you said, take the time to do it the right way so that you can scale. And it's harder in the short term. When you go to the gym, you haven't been in the gym for a while, it sucks. But once you start going for a little bit, you get in shape, and then endorphins start kicking in, you start seeing the results of it, and it gets better and better and better. And that's the same thing around really scaling a business and getting started, putting systems and processes in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about when you made the shift from working in other people's businesses, even if you were the 15th employee, the second employee, to starting your own businesses. Yeah. So what were the differences in that? What were the difficulties that you didn't foresee?
Yeah. Luckily, I'd been in positions where I had a lot of autonomy as being a co-founder or, a major shareholder in the business to kind of do things. And like I said before, I've literally made every mistake possible. So I had the vision of starting this company, and I knew I wanted to try to scale it. I wasn't sure it would scale, but I was intentional about, okay, once I proved there's a business model here, which we did, and we had revenue coming in and we had a way to scale revenue, I was very systematic around when I was the only employee, I would take the time to put the processes in place around everything we did, from sales, marketing, to project management, to time tracking, to invoicing, to all those kinds of things. And so I kind of started it from the ground up to be able to do those things. And then I started implementing that in a CRM system like Salesforce so that I had a system to enforce those policies and processes. And most importantly, capture data consistently across the enterprise so that when I onboarded people, I could say, okay, here's the playbook. Okay. Yep. I want you to follow the playbook. I'm here to support you. I work for you. You don't work for me, but I'm going to, use this as a way to make sure this is working. And if you follow this playbook, you'll get the results. And then I had the data and the systems to measure that, and I didn't have to micromanage. And so when something, we'd outgrow a process, or maybe the process was wrong, we could tweak it, and we could tweak it consistently. And we just iterated on that over and over and over again. And so that's exactly what we do for clients. We use HubSpot and Salesforce to scale their business. And we come alongside them as that business consultant, that tour guide, that business coach to help them put the right processes in place so they don't run red lights and they make wise decisions. We challenge them when they're going to make a bad decision. We challenge them when they're part of the problem, respectively, right? And then we implement that for them because we also understand the technology. And we do it very quickly because that's the power of these platforms. You can do it very quickly. You don't have to wait months to see the results. You can get it going, and then you just iterate on it. And then over time, that consistency compounds, and you wake up one day and suddenly your business is running yourself, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. I get to enjoy and you also get to, as part of being a business leader, you get to transition into different roles that add more value to the company, but also fulfill you even more. If you're like me, I get bored easily. So if I was still doing all the implementation work, I would be bored out of my mind. It's fun taking on these new challenges of growing and scaling the business at the scale that we are now, because I frankly have never done it before. And so that's a fun challenge to be at this level and say, okay, how do we grow 2, 3 times from where we are today?
Yeah. I want to ask you, because you've had fast slow motion for over 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos, because that's a great,
Thank
for
you.
small businesses, also just being able to say you've been in business over 10 years is a
Yeah, I'm the most surprised person of us all. So yeah.
So what was it like getting that first client in the door? Was it somebody that was in your ecosystem? Did you have to go out and do some marketing, advertising? And what was that process like then versus today?
Yeah, I was blessed to, in my ecosystem here now, we're nationally and, have employees all over the place. But early on, a lot of businesses locally to me that knew about me, I'd worked with in the past, were volunteering to sign up. And so the company I was working for previously, where I was the COO, man, they were so gracious to me. And when I told them I wanted to start this company and get going, they became my first client. So I was able to start generating revenue pretty quickly, which is a huge blessing. And then it took me about 6 to 9 months to figure out, okay, how do I find new clients, how to do those kinds of things. And I had implemented Salesforce for my previous businesses. And I found as I was doing this work that people needed the advice and the consulting and the coaching, but they also needed the practical implementation of that alongside. So instead of me talking to them about it, I would say, okay, I'll come back to you next Tuesday and let me show you something. And I go configure it in Salesforce and they'd be like blown away by it. And so I decided when that happened to only do things around the Salesforce platform. Salesforce got wind of that because I was referring them a bunch of business and they started referring me a bunch of business. And then the floodgates kind of opened where I didn't have to go out and try to find my clients. My clients were coming to me. And then I focused on scaling that up. So I wasn't the one doing all the work along the way.
Yeah.
So that was, I tell people all the time, I wasn't smart enough to have that vision to like, okay, this is going to be my go-to-market strategy, but I was at least smart enough to recognize it when it came. And then I was also, experienced enough to say no to everything else. And so we had clients that I had to, part ways with because they didn't want to implement Salesforce. And so I got really focused on, we're only going to do Salesforce. And our mission is to be a blessing to business leaders as they grow and scale their business. Salesforce and HubSpot now are both those tools that allow us to fulfill that mission. So it's never about the tool. We think they're great tools or fun tools. We enjoy doing it, but just like AI, it's just a tool. It enables you to do your business better, serve your clients better, take care of your employees better, generate more profit, and fulfill your mission as a company. And so that's what we did. And 11 years later, we're going strong. And like I said, we have over 120 people. And I started the company as a remote first company 11 years ago, which everybody called me crazy back then. And then COVID made me smart, that kind of thing. But but I wanted the flexibility of our team to be around their families and their friends and not have to commute into the office every day. And also gave me the benefit of I could recruit people all over the United States and in other countries and not be limited to a geography where there was maybe limited human capital that wanted to join our team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all brilliant. And there were so many companies, right, that didn't understand remote work and quickly had to figure out how to make it work. So the fact that you already had these in place, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was a huge advantage. And it goes back to intentionality. Yeah. Remote work is not for every company. And I think that's what we're experiencing now is they were forced to do it in COVID. So it was very reactionary and they had no clue how to do it. Employees liked it for the most part, and they wanted to keep doing it, but it wasn't a part of the business model from the beginning. So all their processes, systems, honestly, their leases and real estate profile didn't align with that. And now you see them like everybody's back in the office or whatever, they're kind of all over the place trying to scramble to figure this thing out. And I just tell everybody is like, have a clear plan, be intentional about it, and align your processes, systems, and your culture to that. Our culture is aligned to this. And those decisions give you the freedom to say no to things instead of saying yes to everything. Because if you don't intentionally say no to things, you will unintentionally say no to things. And I'd much be more intentional about what I say no to so I can say yes to the right things.
Yes. So many things you're saying resonate so deeply with me. Just being open to the possibilities You don't have to know what the whole plan is, but the fact that you started implementing certain practices, Salesforce, and they saw, oh, he's really good at this. We're going to start, he's going to become a big partner for
Yeah.
us. I understand you have summit tier designation.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we're pretty sure confident in this statement. We're the only Summit tier Salesforce partner and HubSpot Elite tier partner. So both of those are the highest tier partnerships with both organizations. And so we're pretty proud of that because
yeah,
we're the best of the best in both ecosystems. And, we're really focused on that business process. It's about solving business problems. If you're using your tools to do other things other than solve business problems, you're misusing your tools. And a lot of times I talk to business owners and business leaders and they want a magic wand wave to solve all their problems. What we're talking about is really hard and it requires a lot of discipline and it requires a lot of effort to do things the right way. Now it's worth it. The fruit from planting those seeds is worth it. And you're only going to get to where you want to go if you do those things. But like all good things that are worth it, it's not easy. You got to put in the work and do the right things. And so often people, and you mentioned AI. I see it right now more in AI. They think AI is going to solve all their problems. AI is just a tool, and there's tech bloat right now with AI. There's just so many vendors and so many tools, and you can get lost in that. You need to focus on solving business problems, being consistent with that, and then AI is going to elevate you and allow you to do more. Otherwise, it's just going to be chaos, and it's going to be exacerbated chaos because of the speed of what AI is doing. It's going to be hard to get control of it. So, what we've been doing so long in the CRM world, you're seeing it now in the AI world too, where these business owners are just all over the place.
yeah. And they're not learning prompt engineering properly, or they're thinking, oh, this is a tool that's just the best use case is creating content, when actually that's probably one of the worst I mean,
Yeah.
yes, it's valid, but there's so many better use cases for these technologies and these tools. So yeah, we could
That's
go
my argument for,
on.
yeah. And that's my argument for CRM. Like if you want to scale your business, a platform-based CRM like Salesforce and HubSpot. And what I mean by that is it'll scale as you scale and you won't have to replace it.
Hmm.
You can run the majority of your business on it. It's not just for sales or marketing. It can do HR, it can do project management, time tracking, have all your data in one place so you minimize the number of tools that you have. If you don't do that, you will not be able to scale your business. I don't care what you do. Only getting lucky will allow you to scale your business because you don't have those disciplines in place to scale it consistently. You're not going to make it in the long term because you're going to eventually slip up and it's going to fall apart quickly. The same thing really applies to AI. The people that have all their data organized in one place, they've been capturing it for a long period of time, are going to be able to leverage AI to leverage their corporate data to make wise decisions. Like generative tools are great, but if it doesn't know about the context of your business and what you're doing, they're very limited in what you can do. And if you don't do it, your competition definitely is going to do it, and you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. So the holy grail of AI, in my opinion, is all your proprietary data around your secret sauce to your business. You overlay that with the general knowledge of a generative AI tool, and then you can do some really, really cool stuff to give you a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah, 100%. But so other things that you have stated that I think are also really important for everybody to think about are, you realized quickly that you were going to stay focused on Salesforce and then HubSpot. And so there'd be businesses that you couldn't work with anymore, but then there would be a lot more opportunity to say yes to the right opportunities
That's
and things
right.
that you actually had time to develop an expertise in, right?
Yeah.
And then I noticed from your website, you also have a few categories that you prefer to work in, perhaps for client business, as again, that double, triple layer of expertise in
Yeah.
those fields. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you honed in on those?
Yeah. So in the ecosystems that we serve, we really love focusing on what we call lower mid-market companies and below. We don't want to work with the Fortune 2000 companies. We don't like working with bureaucracy, red tape, that kind of stuff. We also enjoy the variety of working with different businesses and, different parts of the technology. So our team members work across 5 or so clients at a time, which is fun for them. And that's what we recruit to, and that's what our processes are built around. And it's really good for that client base because they get a project team instead of a person. So they get, they get architects, they get, if they want to bring me in to talk to the business owner and chat about different things, we bring a team approach to serve that market that typically can't afford that level of white glove service because they can't afford it like a Fortune 500 company could. So honestly, that is our secret sauce. And we're one of the few companies that enjoy that space and want to stay there. So a lot of our competition becomes very transient. They come into our space and then they want to move up and get that multi-million-dollar client and understand why, but that's just not who we are. The result of that is we found people in that lower mid-market space some industries and some clients are more open to doing what we've just been talking about. Not everybody is on board with that. And so, we've developed a lot of expertise in healthcare and financial services and manufacturing, professional services and stuff like that. But, and we bring the general knowledge, the blocking and tackling alongside the special sauces around those different industries. And that's a huge differentiator because we know their business. So we're solving the right problems for them and then challenging them if they're wanting to do something awkward. And then we understand the technology as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are all industries that doesn't matter what's going on with the economy, except for their supply chain issues and maybe tariffs for manufacturing a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But they're primarily businesses that are always going to be around that people need to live their lives, to have better health, to understand their finances and be good stewards of their financial capacity, right?
And they're making a big impact in the world. These are really good people doing really good things, building transformational businesses. So it's an honor to come alongside them to help them scale, to get better and bigger at the same time and doing it the right way. So it's a fun segment to serve, and we're getting to work alongside the people that started the company and are leading the company. We're not dealing with middle managers and people that have jobs. We're getting people that this is their life. If this doesn't work, it's bad kind of stuff. And so that's fine. But it's also a side effect of our business is because we work with a lot of different smaller businesses that most people would call smaller businesses. We work with about 200 clients at a time. We're highly diversified. So kind of going back to your point around macroeconomic conditions, externalities that may exist. Yeah, we have clients suffering at different levels around maybe interest rates or the tariffs right now is a big topic and things going on, especially like in manufacturing and stuff like that. But there's other industries that are booming because of it. And we get to kind of balance that out, which gives us stability as a business to be around to serve these customers. All our eggs aren't in one basket. And that allows us to be around long term to serve many more clients because not in every industry sector, not everything's up and to the right? There's always some checks and balances and things that take place, no matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk about the podcast. So what was the impetus behind creating the podcast?
Yeah, trying to, so long for the first 10 years of the company, we just kind of kept our head down and served customers and did our thing and built the company up organically through that way and had a lot of success through that and bootstrapped everything. And so it was all organic and stuff like that. And then we kind of got to a point where it's like, we're getting all these referrals from Salesforce and HubSpot, and that's not going away, at least anytime soon. It hasn't gone away yet, and we don't think it will. But we got to find our own customers. We got to go out there and generate our own leads alongside getting those referrals because we want to bring business to Salesforce and HubSpot as well and control our own destiny a little bit more. Previously, up until that point, we were so busy, we didn't have time to do those kinds of things. So as we got bigger, it created more opportunities for ourselves to do more stuff, to serve more people, make an impact. And that podcast is just a way to kind of get our name out there, add value to people, get them to understand us and our culture and who we are, that can find us through a different channel other than a referral. And so we have a book coming out. We've got a podcast that, that I appreciate that about and want to check out. And so we're doing more things to add more value to people, basically because we're big enough now that we have the opportunity to focus on those things and we want to serve more people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I agree. I mean, just even having you on my podcast, and I'm sure you've been on many other podcasts, but just adding your take, your expertise. And we're not necessarily sharing a how-to menu, but we're talking about things that everybody needs to be thinking about. If they don't exist in their business, they need to be adding these elements or if they do exist, they need to look at how can they continuously refine and get better at implementation.
That's
Because
right.
I tell you what, I've been very organic in the way I've run businesses. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But going through and actually systemizing and going, okay, we got all these clients in during the pandemic because everybody needed PR. They needed to figure out how to get their names out. But are we charging enough? And how many people are working on each piece of the bit of their business? And what's that, and then what other tools are we paying for? And just figuring out that so we can figure out, well, what is the pipeline? What other tools do we need to add or take away from our
Yeah.
business? And I wish I had had somebody there who was guiding me through that process instead of me just flying by the seat of my pants. So, it's a good
Yeah,
way to learn.
same here. I made, like I said, it took me 10 years to start figuring things out again. But yeah, it's a blessing to help these people. I always tell people too, is like, yeah, it's hard to bootstrap a company, but sales is your best way to raise money. If you can figure out how to sell what you offer and people vote with their dollars and pay you cash, that's when you have a real business. And then you can focus on building processes and systems to systematize that, to scale it up. And if you're hyper focused too early on just raising money and you haven't figured out those things, you're giving away your greatest asset, which is equity, at a very, very discounted rate, because those investors are smart. They're not stupid. And they're going to discount you tremendously because you haven't figured out how to generate revenue consistently. So some businesses obviously require capital up front to get started. Businesses like ours don't usually. I mean, it's like, blood, sweat, and tears, and you can eat ramen noodles for a while to get it going and start generating revenue. And so I think a lot of times people kind of glamorize the fundraising process, which is extremely time consuming, takes up, all that. If you just take all that effort and focus on selling something, you get to control your own destiny. You get to increase the valuation. And then if and when you want to raise money, your equity is going to be valued at a fair price and you're not giving that away. I'm always just so surprised at how people are so willing to give away equity at a huge discount. And if you truly believe in your company and what it is, that's your most valuable asset. There is nothing in your portfolio that's more valuable than the equity in your company. So
Wow.
don't give that away at a discounted price to an outsider that's just giving you capital.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And something that I'm thinking of, because again, I was at a conference. They did a little mini pitch competition with 3 businesses the day before. I was sitting in on a pitch meeting. And one thing I've realized, whether you're fundraising or you're trying to sell to your actual customer base, separate from the investor, and that they're also a customer, but just
Well,
a different kind. People often they lead with their features instead of leading with the problem solution.
yeah,
And it drives me crazy. And so in both of those things, you really need to think about, what are you actually solving? How are you
yeah,
saving a company time, money, putting
yeah.
somebody at ease, whatever the case may be, helping them jump to higher results. And so many people don't lead with that. And that's kind of the 101 of marketing, right? You're helping people realize how they're the hero, and you're
That's
the
right.
you're the person who's going to help them. You're the guide to make them the
Yeah.
hero.
Yeah.
And
Donald Miller, I mean, you're kind of quoting story brand stuff. I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
think he does it more simply than anybody else. Your number one goal is to pique curiosity and
yeah,
make it so clear that they have a problem and you're the tour guide that's going to be able to solve it. But you got to say something to them that, like, oh, I need that, like, right
yes,
away. And then you
exactly.
can enlighten them. He calls it enlightenment. You can enlighten them on all the details about how you do that. But if you start off talking about, my grandfather started this company 75 years ago, nobody cares about that. What they care about is like you have a solution to a problem they have, and they may or may not know they have a problem, but you got to get that attention like right away. And as soon as you get that, they're going to be begging to learn more, and then you can close the deal. But yeah, we also, because of Shark Tank and some of these things, and I love Shark Tank. I watch Shark Tank just like everybody else, but we kind of glamorize the pitch competition too. And it's just a ton of work, go sell something, use that same effort to go sell something kind of thing than to go to all these pitch competitions and that kind of stuff. And those are fun. And don't get me wrong. I just see these entrepreneurs spending so much time doing all that stuff instead of just building their business,
Right.
which if they'd focus on that, they wouldn't have to go raise money.
Well,
In the
and that's when you get the referrals, like you said.
yeah, yeah,
You had the proof of
yeah,
concept, And
Yeah.
that's when you just started getting referral after referral and then became a partner and then got more referrals and were able to like really grow your business. But beyond, I mean, it's not just referrals that make your business. You obviously had to be really intentional about creating your workforce, figuring out how to look for the right people in a remote fashion, the communication that you'd have with your team, all of those different parts. Because if you didn't have all of those processes and triggers and implementation aspects in place, then you wouldn't have a successful business.
Exactly. Yeah, I call it the three P's. I think it's kind of like the iron triangle. You have to have all three to build a successful, sustainable
Yep.
business. The first is purpose. You have to have a mission greater than yourself. And like I said, ours is impact and to be that blessing of business leaders and growth. That's why we get out of bed in the morning. That's our client focus. If we're not delighting customers and they're not happy, nothing else matters. But I think the second P is people. People are all that matter at the end of the day. On your deathbed, you're not going to be saying, I wish I had more money. I wish I had done this, that, or other. You're going to be wanting the loved ones and the people you care about around you. And you want to know that you made an impact in people's lives that's going to carry on when you're gone. And we, as business leaders, we get the opportunity to do that on a daily basis with the people we have on our team, with the partners we interact with, and the customers we have. And so our core people principle is flexibility, because I wanted them to be around their family. I wanted to be able them to go on dates if they were in the dating, they weren't married yet, all those kinds of things, and not miss out on t-ball games and dance recitals and all these other kind of things, because we work hard and we work a lot of hours. But I wanted them to have the flexibility to work from home and define their own schedule. And then the third P is profit. You better be making money, because if you're not making money, you don't have a real business and you're not going to be around long term. And so profit's not a bad word. It's a good word. And it gives you the flexibility to make wise decisions and not be backed into a corner. But it's a triangle. All three are equally important. You can't try to fulfill your purpose so much that you neglect your people or burn out your people or not make money. You can't serve everybody. We only serve customers that appreciate us, that align with our vision and are going to pay us well. We're not cheap. We don't want to be cheap, but that allows us to be around long term, to serve them long term, take care of our people so that they have the flexibility. It keeps them happy that serve those customers. And you see those three P's kind of form that triangle. And I think that's how I started my company. And I think that's a foundation. You can call them whatever you want to, but I think you got to have at least those three, and you got to keep them aligned. And then that defines your processes. That defines your culture and who you are. As you mentioned, that's how you recruit. So we talk about it nonstop during the recruiting process. And if that doesn't resonate with people, they're not a good fit. And that's okay. And stuff like that. And so that really kind of forms the foundation, and it keeps everybody accountable. It keeps me accountable. Like, because I'm just as susceptible to chasing shiny objects as anybody else, but I have to say no to that thing because it violates one of our core principles, or focuses us to be, or keeps us out of focus of where we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have everybody go to your website, fastslowmotion.com. We'll have it in the show notes. They can click through to learn more about all of the different things that you do. They can listen to the podcast. You talked about how scaling, having a CRM, making sure that you're pouring into your customer base and just selling is so vitally important. What would you say is another piece of advice that you'd give to somebody who's looking at how to make improvements in their business?
Yeah, don't get in analysis paralysis. You start. Like, and define those processes. Because if you look at the problem, especially if you have an established business, the problem seems overwhelming and you never get going. So just start somewhere. And I would advise you start with places where maybe it's low hanging fruit and a high return on value and almost maybe potentially low risk. So you can try to identify those things to get started, and then just start documenting those processes about how it should be done. I'm a big fan of recording videos because I hate writing a bunch of stuff. All right, here's the way we do an invoice. Here's the way we, reconcile the bank account. Here's the way we build out our marketing campaign. Here's whatever. Record a video and then start implementing those processes within a system and have the team follow that. And then involve your team to improve those and get them better. And then they'll have buy-in and skin in the game. And then you manage toward that process. And you enforce like that process to make sure it's done. And if the process is wrong, that's fine. You're doing it consistently wrong. You can tweak it and make it better. And if somebody's not following the process for whatever reason, you can ask questions, and then you can identify maybe they're not a good fit for that role, or the process is broken, whatever. It just gives you a way to manage your business systematically instead of just playing whack-a-mole all over the place and trying to figure out what's wrong. And so that's this thing I see a lot of times is they just don't know what to do to get started. And you just have to do it. You got to get in the gym if you want to get in shape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really great note to end on. But I always want to ask one last question, which is, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, poem, verse, family motto, words that continue to keep you on this path of servant leadership, building, helping other people create impact as well?
I've got a bunch of them. One that just came to mind. I was actually talking to somebody today about it, but Truett Cathy said one time, the founder of Chick-fil-A, he's like, if we focus on getting better, our customers will demand that we get bigger. And so if you can focus on what you can control the inputs, not the outputs, but focus on getting better, a little bit better each and every day. Your customers in the market will demand you get better because, I'll get bigger and you'll have that opportunity to serve more people and do more things and make a bigger impact because you were focusing on getting better, a little bit better each and every day. So I love that quote.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. This has been a fun conversation. I know it's inspired me. I love when I have these conversations where I can go, okay, now I'm inspired to go back and look at my processes and see what one thing I can tweak to get a little better every day. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I have a client that says this all the time, so I stole it from me. He's like, my business is kind of like my video game now. I get to tweak a little bit and see how it does and stuff like that. And I think that's a good analogy. Is like, in order to scale a business, you got to elevate yourself from doing everything and being the person that helps define the initial processes and creates the systems and that kind of stuff to see your team do it way better than you ever could before. And that's, I promise you, just as somebody that lived it, is way more fulfilling than you being the one doing all the hustling and doing all the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much. I'm excited to add your podcast to my list of what I'm listening to. And
Awesome,
I'm also hoping that everybody who's listening to us today will go to your website, even if they don't fit one of the categories. I know they'll glean a lot of great information, be able to listen to your podcast as well and get those helpful productivity tips and tricks. So thank you to everybody who's watching this episode, listening to it, this conversation I'm having with John Burdett. Fast Slow Motion. Really enjoyed it. And I know you did too. So
thank you very much.
Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.